What is your vision of feminism now? I imagine you'd describe it as being somewhat different from your mother's vision of feminism.
Well, the thing is, I think that the word itself, of course, has famously fallen out of favor with my generation and the generations younger than I am. I'm 32. I don't think that's so surprising or so problematic. Nobody's walking around calling themselves yippies anymore either. So I just think that the various names for revolutionary movements for social change that were comfortable and popular in the 60s and 70s, that they're just not, they just don't fit necessarily now. And I think that there's no such thing as a unified women's movement right now. I think it's fragmented, and I think people are doing lots of important things. And I think that the ongoing struggle for reproductive rights is crucial. And I think that people are doing so much important work. I just don't think it's got a sort of solid unified center.
This is Fresh Air. I'm Terry Gross, back with Ariel Levy, author of the book Female Chauvinist Pigs, Women and the Rise of Raunch Culture. She describes female chauvinist pigs as women who make sex objects of other women and of themselves, and who see it as empowering to imitate porn stars and strippers. She wonders why sexual stereotypes that feminists rejected are now seen as liberating. You see raunch culture in part as a reaction against political correctness.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What kind of political correctness do you feel like you were exposed to and that you understand a reaction to?
Oh, gosh. Well, Wesleyan, it was so insane. When I was in school, it was the time also, the early 90s, people were just going wild with this stuff, and the place also. But, I think that it was like you had to trip over yourself to say anything because you had to constantly be identifying your own particular location as a thinker or speaker. So, if you're saying anything, you got to make sure you're saying, okay, but I'm a Jewish white woman from this economic bracket, and, on and on and on. And that's another problem with the language. I think that's one of the reasons people get prickly about saying, well, I'm a feminist, or as a feminist, I think that this, that, or the other. It's like that only tells you one thing. You also want to know 14 million other things about the person to sort of identify their point of view. And I think that, as a reaction, as a rebellion against that PC tightness that was big in the late 80s and early 90s, there's this freewheeling quality to raunch, this kind of like throw your hands up in there and shrug it all off and just, suddenly you don't have to say women, you can say chick. You don't have to say African American, you can say black, or you can say things that are even, less okay than that. I think you see that, with the rise of hip hop too. This just sort of like casting off of any idea of political correctness. So, I think that that's very attractive to a lot of people in their 30s and 20s. And in the teens, they have nothing to react against. I think they never lived in a time when bitches and hoes wasn't part of the lexicon.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up hip-hop. Is the phenomenon that you're talking about, do you see that as a white phenomenon? Or
No.
Uh-huh.
No, I don't. I think, all you have to do is like watch almost any hip hop video and just see like a phalanx of young women who are almost naked with breast implants, using their body parts to like wax a car while a rapper goes at it and does his thing in front of them. So the man is the artist and is the speaker, and so much more often than not, the women are sort of hood ornaments. That's completely the raunch culture aesthetic and ethos.
Do you think that there will soon be a new generation of teenagers and young women who react against raunch culture? Just as, right before raunch culture, there was so much like grunge culture among teenagers wearing just like baggy flannel shirts and hooded sweatshirts and really covering themselves up.
Well, I don't know. I'm always surprised by the direction fashion goes in. But, I do want to point out, again, this split between appearance and behavior. I think there's still a lot of emphasis on purity and virginity, and some of the early stars of raunch culture, for example, were Jessica Simpson and Britney Spears. And when they first became popular, it was like, they were half naked. They were these national pastimes with drooling over these girls. But they had to tell us constantly in their music that sex was something they sang about, not something they engaged in. I mean, I still think that there's this real pressure to be a virgin even while you look like a whore. It's like we want all our sort of iconic female roles in one. And I think, not unrelated is the fact that we keep pumping billions of dollars into abstinence-only education, which tells these young people essentially just say no to sex until you're married. And we do that despite the fact that there's never been a single study to show that this works. And of course, the United States has woefully high levels of, teen pregnancy and STD spread. So I think it's like there's an actual anxiety about sexuality paired with a sort of endless appetite for hotness.
So you see the culture heading in two opposite directions, or seemingly opposite directions at the same time. Is there any way of reconciling that?
Well, I mean, I just think that if young people are going to exist in this, the only world that that there is, I think that they need to be armed with more information than the concept just say no, which is what they're taught in abstinence-only education classes. And I think it's just so bizarre that we keep pumping money into those programs when there's never been a single study to show that they work. And when, the United States has much, much worse rates of teen pregnancy and teen STDs than other nations of comparable privilege.
Well, Ariel Levy, thank you very much for talking with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Ariel Levy is the author of Female Chauvinist Pigs, Women and the Rise of Raunch Culture. It recently came out in paperback.